that we, when we stand up to those who oppress our communities, that Allah accepts from us that as a form of jihad, that we are struggling against tyrants and rulers, not only abroad in the Middle East or in the other side of the world, but here in these United States of America, where you have fascists and white supremacists and Islamophobes reigning in the White House.
Sarsour's supporters maintain the word causing fierce backlash has been taken out of context, and that she's also been fighting back, tweeting, "Right wing tries to demonize my leadership. Editing videos is their favorite pastime." Here now, Ben Shapiro is editor-in-chief of DailyWire.com, and Hassan Shibli is chief executive director of CARE Florida, a friend of Ms. Sarsour's, and was president when she made the comment. So, Hassan, let me start with you. Tell me how it was taken out of context.
Well, jihad means to struggle for good, and she was very clear that it's our duty as Americans and as Muslims to put forward our best effort and to struggle to speak truth to power, to help the disenfranchised, to stand for the oppressed, no matter what the cost is of speaking out. And she's actually paying the price of speaking out and calling out the Trump administration's attacks on minorities, attacks against women. Linda's a revolutionary American Muslim, proud hijab sporting activist, and we stand with her. We're proud of the tremendous work she's doing to stand with all disenfranchised minorities to make America great by standing for justice and speaking truth to power, which is exactly what jihad is about.
Okay, so I first read about this on the Daily Wire when you wrote about it, Ben. Tell me why you think that it was not taken out of context when she calls for jihad against the White House.
Well, I mean, it clearly wasn't taken out of context. Everybody I know who posted this story posted the entire video, as well as a large portion of the transcript from what she said. I don't think anybody is claiming that she openly called for violence against President Trump, but jihad means more than just internal struggle or quote-unquote struggle for good. I mean, we all know that there are terrorists all over the world who invoke the word jihad as justification for what they do, and Linda Sarsour knows that too. I mean, she knows how to make a headline. She is a radical anti-Semite who has backed terrorists in the past. She's a person who has said that I
Stop smearing her. Don't smear a woman who's not here to defend herself. You just don't like a vocal American Muslim woman proudly standing for justice. Don't smear a woman who's not here to defend herself. Shame on you.
Okay, I'll talk about CARE instead. CARE is an organization that was an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation.
Right, shift the topic. Exactly. Never indicted. Don't try to drown out the conversation. Let's talk about what jihad means. Jihad means striving for truth.
Let me ask you, Hassan.
Exactly what
Hassan, let me ask you something.
If you want to talk about context, let's talk about the full context.
Yes, go ahead and ask me.
Okay, this is what I want to ask you.
The fact that she began this speech by praising a guy who has in the past talked about how jihad includes violent jihad. She started her speech with that. So let's not pretend that you can you're the one taking this one line out of context and then suggesting that it only refers to some sort of
I encourage everybody just to listen to the speech for herself.
So I listened to it, and I have a question to you from a communication standpoint. So she wants to be an effective activist. Surely she is aware that when the general public hears the word jihad, it's not necessarily about an internal struggle and standing up for people's rights. I mean, we do that all the time in America, like our country's actually built on that. So I'm curious why she doesn't think that she would get some backlash. If you're going to say those things, you are going to get, stir up a hornet's nest.
Well, that's why it's so important that she used that word, because we must reclaim that word from the extremists that have misdefined it and misrepresented it. So Muslim extremists and anti-Muslim extremists have both hijacked and distorted jihad to mean something horrible, to mean exactly what jihad does not mean, actually. And the only way we can reclaim our words and reclaim our language is by leaders proudly and unapologetically using it in the right context so we can show the world what jihad really means. Jihad does not mean war,
I think that you're like
war.
Whistling past the graveyard, because that's already the reclamation, Ben. It's too late for that.
Of course,
no, it isn't too late. It isn't too late. It isn't too late.
Okay, if it isn't too late, then I'd like to hear CARE come out right now and condemn the Muslim Brotherhood.
Why would we condemn the Muslim Brotherhood? We don't condemn political organizations. Listen, let's not, again, every single time you want to try to distort the conversation. Why don't you condemn the KKK? Why don't you condemn the Lord's Resistance Army? Every time a Muslim comes up, you start asking Muslims to condemn. Muslims are human beings. We're proud Americans. We stand for peace. We stand for justice. We condemn all people. We condemn all people who engage in violence against human beings, against civilians. Take that for granted. We are one humanity, one people. Let's get to know each other. Let's not promote fear and hate of each other.
All right, Hassan, I'll give the last word to you, Ben.
Okay, if you want to reclaim the word jihad, you should start by condemning organizations that promote jihad all over the world instead of associating with them, praising
Why would
them,
we,
and talking about
again, you're misdefining jihad. Jihad means standing for justice. Jihad means standing for justice. It doesn't mean terrorism. And we stand against all terrorists and all those who engage in violence.
Organizations that participate in it. This is not hard.
We have and we do, just as everybody else does. Thank you, and God bless you, and God bless America.
Thank you.
That's an amazing welcome. I can see that you Catholics take your mid-30s Jews very seriously. So I'm here to talk a little bit about the elections that are coming up and why, obviously, it's important that everybody be involved. So the elections that are coming up, it was amply summed up before. Democrats are defending 26 seats. Republicans are defending 9. Trump won 10 of those seats. States the Democrats are defending by an average about 15 points. There are a bunch of seats that Republicans should pick up so long as they don't nominate complete idiots, which fortunately, unlike in Alabama, it seems like they are more likely to do, is nominate some decent candidates. Republicans have a 14-point lead in the generic ballot in West Virginia. They have an 8-point lead in North Dakota versus Heidi Heitkamp. They have a 5-point lead versus Joe Donnelly in Indiana, a 5-point lead in Missouri versus Claire McCaskill, a 5-point lead versus John Tester in Montana. So that is 5 seats right off the bat that Republicans should win if they run their races properly. In the House, obviously, Democrats need to pick up 23 seats. The best available data suggests that it's about a 50-50 shot right now whether the Democrats win the House. Now, that's pretty amazing considering that Donald Trump's approval rating has been hovering between the high 30s and low 40s for virtually all of his presidency, but it is demonstrative of just how terrible Democrats are at legitimately everything. I mean, their campaign this week is apparently Hamas is good, we learned. And we learned that that MS-13 rather, are not animals. We learned that, so that's good. And we've learned that the NRA are terrorists. So if you are a member of the NRA, you're a terrorist. If you're Hamas, you're innocent. And if you're a member of MS-13, you're a perfectly decent human being who is not, in fact, an animal. This is what we've learned from the Democrats this week. If they want to run on that, more power to them. Enjoy. One of the things that's happened with President Trump is that President Trump's election has driven them completely mad and driven them completely off the rails. So I think a lot of folks were duly surprised by President Trump's election. I know that I lost a lot of money over it in bets. But, but what's happened with the Democrats is they've started nominating the most extreme candidates they can find in primaries. And it's having a pretty significant impact, or could at least have a pretty significant impact. There were some state elections in Pennsylvania, state primaries in Pennsylvania, and 2 card-carrying members of the Democratic Socialists of America beat state representatives in Democratic primaries with 65% and 68% of the vote, respectively, in Pennsylvania. That's a pretty amazing thing you're seeing in Seattle, that the leadership of the Seattle City Council is now being led by Shama Sawant, who's an open socialist. The movement to the hard left by the Democrats is the worst thing they can do if they actually want to win back the House. Because you see seats like John Ossoff running in Georgia's 8th district. He didn't win because he was seen as a Nancy Pelosi acolyte. The seats they are winning, they're running moderate Democrats. They're not running hardcore left Democrats, but their base want them to run hardcore left Democrats because Donald Trump has made them so insane. His election, even more than the Bush years, it has made them completely bonkers, and now they think that they are going to win back everything simply by shouting at the moon, Bernie Sanders style. So this raises the question, how are the Republicans actually doing? So the truth is the Republicans are doing pretty well overall. I mean, I'm amazed to say that the Trump administration is the most conservatively governing administration of my lifetime, bar none. It is not even a question. The first year and a half of Trump's administration has been incredibly conservative in a variety of ways. On social issues particularly, Republicans are doing pretty well. On judges, as we were hearing, Donald Trump has appointed 39 federal judges, including Justice Gorsuch, 21 judges on circuit courts. This is the highest number of federal judicial appointments for any president at this point in the presidency in American history, ever. On abortion, they've done a little bit less well. They haven't defunded Planned Parenthood. This obviously is a major point of contention in the Senate. Very difficult to do that when you only have 51 seats in the Senate and you have Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins as part of your caucus. That said, obviously the House should have forced them to vote on defunding Planned Parenthood and stood up to the Senate and forcing them to do that. That's their main failure with regard to abortion, but Republicans are moving apparently toward defunding the Title X funding for Planned Parenthood. That's something the administration's about to do. And President Trump, immediately upon entering office, signed the Mexico City policy. So he's done that as well. On religious freedom, President Trump has been excellent. The executive branch has done an excellent job. He has signed an executive order to allow religious institutions to speak about politics openly, which is great, and protected religious institutions like the Little Sisters of the Poor, and signed executive orders to allow businesses that work with the Health and Human Services Department to actually abide by their own religious edicts. So all of this is really good stuff from President Trump. Now, this is going to provide a lot of gas in the tank for religious conservatives to get out there and vote, especially when you look at the other side of the aisle. Because when I say that the Democrats have become incredibly radical, it is particularly on social issues and issues of religious freedom where Democrats have become insanely radical. And this ranges from their belief that government should involve itself in your church, to their belief that your government should involve itself in your schools, to their belief that government should involve itself in how you raise your children. They legitimately believe that it is the job of government to take your children's education away from you and give it to a bunch of leftist social acolytes who believe that the Bible is not the inerrant word of God, but the Bible actually is a deeply evil document that teaches intolerance and hatred. This is what they actually believe about the Bible. And they've made this clear in policy for the last decade at minimum. In 2006, we all remember when Archbishop Sean P. O'Malley and the Catholic Charities of Boston announced they could no longer work to find homes for children, thanks to the state's decision to crack down on institutions for not giving children to same-sex couples. The governor at the time was Mitt Romney. He tried to stop it. Democrats wouldn't work with him to allow the Catholic Charities to continue to do adoptions. This is going to spread across the country if Democrats have their way. On abortion, the government has decided to treat churches as businesses. At least Democrats have decided to do that for purposes of pushing this anti-traditional social agenda. After the passage of Obamacare, the Obama administration decided that it would be mandatory for churches to issue forms to the government notifying the government that churches would not be covering contraceptive care. They wanted to know that so that the government could then step in and provide that contraceptive care. This is the Little Sisters of the Poor case. When the Little Sisters of the Poor said, we won't do that, the Obama administration threatened to fine them $70 million. In that case, the Obama administration actually argued in court, in front of the Supreme Court, that the government should be able to dictate hiring decisions about priests, rabbis, and pastors. And they should actually be able to tell churches who to hire and who not to hire. That they should be able to force Catholic institutions to hire female priests, for example. Or that they should be able to actually force shuls like mine, synagogues like mine, to hire a gay rabbi. This was one of the things that the HHS was actually pushing under President Obama. It was an amazing argument. Fortunately, it lost at the Supreme Court level, but there's no doubt that this is where the left wants to go. In June 2016 in California, which of course our state is the worst state in the nation when it comes to